Heavy anti-transgender rhetoric and legislation in the United States escalated rapidly around 2015 after the Obergefell versus Hodges decision.
Legalizing same-sex marriage across the land, and it's profound. The 5-4 vote in many ways reflecting the huge societal shift of the last 20 years.
They legalized gay marriage nationwide and required all states to recognize same-sex marriage in the same way as a heterosexual union. By 2017, conservative organizations had pivoted their focus onto trans people following the loss of the same-sex marriage debate.
Transgenderism is false, as it is, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
This also saw the first Trump administration enacting anti-trans bills.
Breaking a 6-3 Supreme Court rules the Trump administration's ban on transgender troops from the U.S. military can take effect.
With over a decade of systematic abuse hurled towards transgender Americans, it was only a matter of time before that politics started to drip towards the UK.
I had an experience recently in a restaurant where a man dressed as a woman walked into the toilet, so I was on my own in the toilets. He stood behind me and stared at me into the mirror, looking at me in my eyes. Now, I have no idea if he intended me any harm, but my instinct, my evolved instinct as a woman was to be frightened, because unlike almost any other species, women are far less powerful than men. We can't defend ourselves.
Goodness me, that speech was probably one of the worst transphobic dog whistle speeches that I've heard in an awful long time. The idea of linking trans people with predators, frankly, is disgusting, and you should be ashamed.
In 2015, the UK was ranked #1 out of Europe for LGBTQ rights and safety. Though in alignment with the US and all the anti-trans media coverage, the UK has significantly dropped down the rankings. The most recent 2026 data states that the UK has fallen down to 22nd place out of 49. Just in the last 10 years, that has changed dramatically, with the most recent attack on the trans community being the updated EHRC Code of Conduct. Now, what exactly triggered this update? Well, for years, the Equality Act of 2010 protected people both from discrimination of sex and gender reassignment. Crucially, it was widely understood that if a trans person had obtained a gender recognition certificate, then this legally changed their sexes for all bases, including the Equality Act. In 2018, the Scottish Parliament proposed to update the Gender Recognition Act of 2004. This was in order to simplify the process of trans people changing or updating their birth certificates. A 2018 consultation received over 15,500 responses, and the analysis shows that around 60 to 65% of Scottish respondents agreed with the proposed changes. These 2018 foundations eventually paved the way for the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. The Scottish Government managed to get this bill passed in late 2022.
Is yes 86, no 39. There were no abstentions. The motion is therefore agreed, and the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
However, this bill was ultimately blocked by the UK Parliament using Section 35 of the Scottish Parliament Act.
Taken this decision lightly. The government has looked closely at the potential impact of the bill, and I've considered all relevant policy and operational implications together with the Minister for Women and Equalities. And it is our assessment that the bill would have a serious adverse impact, among other things, on the operation of the Equality Act 2010.
The support of trans people through the Scottish Parliament did not go unnoticed by some particular groups. This ultimately led to the formation of the well-known group For Women Scotland. For Women Scotland have stated its beliefs that there are only two sexes, that a person's sex is not a choice, nor can it be changed. Over a 5-year period between 2018 and 2023, For Women Scotland brought judicial review challenges towards the Scottish Parliament. This was in an attempt to redefine their definitions of a man and a woman.
Review has been granted over a Scottish Government move to redefine the meaning of woman. For Women Scotland took legal action against the government for including men who identify as female in a law designed to address the number of women on public boards.
I'm Susan Smith, co-director of For Women Scotland, and the event today was a women's rally to mark and protest about the fact that the Scottish Government are determined to pass GRA reform, which will effectively undermine the definition of sex in law in Scotland.
Along the way, the group even garnered the recognition of anti-trans celebrities like J.K. Rowling. In October 2022, writing in the Sunday Times, she described For Women Scotland as a grassroots feminist group that has emerged as a leading voice for Scottish women over the past few years. In March 2021, the group lost their judicial review in an attempt to remove trans women from the definition of women. The group would go on to lose several more reviews to the Scottish Parliament. However, they did garner enough attention that they were permitted to submit this review to the UK Supreme Courts. The Supreme Court heard the appeal on the 26th and 27th of November 2024, with judgment due in a few weeks or months' time.
As will be set out in these oral submissions, the appellant asks this court to uphold the appeal. The appellant disagrees with the analysis and disputes most of the arguments set out in the statement of case for the Scottish ministers and the Lord Advocate. Sex is biological and can therefore understand that there is a possibility under the Act of there being protections for a protected characteristic of gender reassignment, which is distinct from one's sex, but is dependent on changes to physiological or other attributes of one's biological sex.
For Women Scotland called upon the court to find sex an immutable biological state. And on the 16th of April 2025, the Supreme Court ruled that the definitions of man, woman and sex in the Equality Act of 2010 referred to biological sex, deeming that it would be incoherent to include trans people with GRCs in these categories.
When it refers to woman or sex, it is referring to biological sex and not somebody who has a gender recognition certificate. Judges here were being asked to make a decision on the correct interpretation of the Equality Act. Was it limited to biological sex, or could it also include someone with a gender recognition certificate? But today, the judges have decided and ruled in favour of For Women Scotland. They were the ones who appealed against the Scottish Government.
Following this, the Equality and Human Rights Commission released a statement following the Supreme Court ruling. Under the Act, they stated that a woman is defined by a biological woman assigned female at birth, and a male is defined by a biological man assigned male at birth. Trans status, even those with a gender recognition certificate, does not legally change that person's sex for the purpose of the Act. In workplaces, trans women should not use female facilities and trans men should not use male facilities either, which is crazy. This shifted the focus from defining sex to exclusively alienating trans people from their right to use their gender-based spaces. The Conservatives' narrative is still that trans people are groomers, despite the overwhelming statistics from global crime data.
Critical race theory had a good run as the GOP's favourite attack line on the left, but it seems that groomer has become the right's new buzzword of choice.
These statistics show that the overwhelming majority of child abuse and sexual exploitation stems from cisgender heterosexual men. That is a fact. Go and Google it. The EHRC immediately began drafting a revision to the Code of Conduct that deals specifically with single-sex spaces. And by September 2025, they submitted these revisions to the UK government for review. Now, there was a period of delay, but eventually in May of 2026, the Minister of Women and Equalities officially accepted the redraft.
Today marks a significant milestone for equality law in Britain. I'm Mary Ann Stevenson, Chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I'm pleased to say that our updated Code of Practice for services, public functions and associations has been laid before Parliament by the Minister for Women and Equalities.
Having received ministerial approval, Parliament now has 40 days to review the Code of Conduct. So just what are the main takeaways from the new EHRC guidance? Sex is biological. The new guidance confirms that under the Equality Act of 2010, sex is to be defined as biological sex at birth. Single-sex spaces. The update confirms that facilities access should be based upon biological sex rather than gender identity. Women-only services. This specifies that if a female-only space accepts trans women, then they may no longer define as a single-sex space. Competitive sport. This also specifies that if service includes trans women, they may no longer quantify as a single-sex service. On the 10th of June 2026, significant industry pushback emerged. Groups like Equity LGBTQ+ Committee released public statements declaring the code unworkable, warning that policing biological sex would put both trans people and gender non-conforming cis people at risk.
You cannot go out in public. This is about a segregation of space. This is about trying to force trans people out of public spaces, trying to force us back into the closet, trying to force us not to exist, and that's why we're here today, protesting the EHRC's interim guidance.
I have already seen plenty of instances where cisgender women have been subject to trans discrimination. For example, it was only recently that we had some cisgender women being criticised within sport for looking like transgender women or having an unfair advantage, purely due to their testosterone levels.
Elaine Khalif was disqualified from the Women's World Championships by the International Boxing Association for failing to meet eligibility criteria.
I've also seen other instances of cisgender heterosexual women being questioned in their own toilets, being questioned on what they have between their legs. Bearing in mind these people are assigned female at birth. I don't understand how these groups of women like For You Scotland, I don't understand how they didn't see that this would also impact cisgender women. So, you at home, what can you do to help? To prevent the updated draft from automatically passing into law, a formal resolution to disapprove must be passed in either the House of Commons or the House of Lords before July 9th, 2026. Now, I'm going to share with you two main ways that you can help to prevent this law from passing, and both links will be in the description below. You can write to your local MP. Using a pre-drafted letter written by Bristol Pride and the incredible Bimini, all you need to do is click the link in the description and edit a few details like your name and your MP's name and addresses. Once you've done that, you can hit send and that will directly go to your local MP. You can also sign this amazing petition. This petition is to disapprove the Draft Equality Act of 2010 guidance laid on the 21st of May 2026. And again, you can find both of these links in my description below. Additionally, on the 18th of October, I will be running my first ever half marathon. Pray for my legs, girl, pray. And this is for a wonderful charity called Not a Phase. Not a Phase attempts to empower trans youth and trans adults through the use of education, legislation, girl, safe spaces, you name it. Not a Phase is there for you. And I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm so excited to be raising money for them. So please, whatever you can give, the link is in the description below, along with the other links that we've just discussed. Now, I know this information is a lot and it will weigh heavy on your hearts, just like it does mine. We need to stand up and do something. And the best way we can get involved is by signing those links and writing to your local MP. Get to work.